Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Power Session 3. We made it through a wonderful day so far, and we're continuing. I am Linda Ryan, your program manager here at the Chamber. I'd like to take one more moment to thank our session sponsors, Univest and Merck Sharp and Dome Federal Credit Union. And now I have the pleasure of handing this presentation over to your presenter, Molly Watson. Molly Watson is talking about life lessons from the School of Hard Knocks. Take it away, Molly.
Thank you so much, Linda, and welcome everybody. Happy Friday. I'm extremely happy that it's Friday and looking forward to sharing a bit of my story with you. So without further ado, we will jump right in. So I like to say that I earned a BR from the School of Hard Knocks without ever even enrolling. That's a bachelor's of resilience. And I minored in making it up as you go. Interestingly, school leadership never seems to change. Fate and random events have been at the helm for as long as I've been a student. I learned actually about the School of Hard Knocks from my dad. He was like a cliche king. He also happened to be a psychiatrist. It was one of his go-to sayings in our house growing up. Like when I didn't win class president when I was a junior in high school, he's like, don't worry about it, sis. It's just another Knocks or a lesson from the School of Hard Knocks. Well, it didn't make me and my teenage angst feel any better, but I just chalked it up to dad's saying. And, you know, over time, it's grown to have significant meaning for me. The harder and the faster the random events of my life seem to come at me. You know, Albert Einstein, arguably one of the smartest men ever, used the phrase the School of Hard Knocks often. He attributed it to great human beings graduating from that. It was also known as the University of Life. So today I'm going to share with you some of the lessons I've learned throughout my coursework at SHK, a School of Hard Knocks. They say that in order to write a book or give a speech, you have to be an expert. Well, I am by no means an expert, but what I am is a survivor, a happy, grateful survivor. We're all apparently enrolled in this University of Life at birth. And like all of our other more formal educational opportunities, what we get out of it really depends 100% on what we put into it, how we choose to navigate it, how we show up. Do we apply the lessons we learned? Can we see our, in our futures, the value of this curriculum? I think you look at it, and the main reason we seek formal education is to train for, what we want to be when we grow up. Well, the truth is, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'm thankful now for a successful 3-decade career in corporate America, working in advertising, marketing, communications, and business strategy. But none of that was planned. I jumped to advertising in college when I figured out that becoming an actress probably wasn't going to pan out. Duh. That's a story for another time, but I digress. There was one thing I did know when I wanted to grow up, and I knew that I wanted to be a mom. And I wanted to be a mom with a daughter. I had it all planned out. I was going to have twin girls, and they were going to be known as Nancy and Jane. And Nancy was my BFF in preschool, and Jane was my mom. I adored my mom. She was the funniest person I think I've ever met. She was whip smart, extremely empathetic. She had a fabulous sense of adventure, and she had great taste. But when I think about everything I learned from my mom, she taught me the importance of being truly generous with your heart, your time, your ears for listening. But my mom also struggled with alcoholism and depression her entire life. And, when things were good with mom, they were really fantastic. And when they weren't, I learned very early on how to get through it. My childhood included a ton of prerequisite courses for my BR, including nervous breakdowns and suicide attempts, being woken in the middle of the night by an inebriated mom who was leaving my dad yet again, piling into a station wagon and going to some ratty motel. Dad who was emotionally absent, their divorce, their remarriage, cross-country moves, and a lot of other stuff I've thankfully probably blocked. I am nothing if not candid and honest. And so today's conversation, it may feel like I'm making light of some of the stuff that I've lived through, and I may be. But you see, humor was a big thing in my family, a very large family, and it's become a gift for me. We learn to lighten the mood with humor, use laughter and joking to make our way through darkness and tragedy. So it's really common to hear one of my 5 siblings crack a joke that some people might think is inappropriate in the middle of some serious shit. It's like a relief valve for all of us. But my course in death and dying came early for me. My mom passed away almost exactly 1 month after I graduated from Indiana University. And she had battled lung cancer my entire senior year of college. And I spent many weekends driving to and from our home in Ohio with nothing but 6 hours and a Diet Coke to contemplate what life without my mom would look like. She was my best friend back then. We shared this great dream for me to get a job and move to the Big Apple. So one day, miraculously, I landed a job on Madison Avenue in advertising 2 months after she passed away. So I packed up my stuff. I boarded a plane with a one-way ticket and a box of shoes. They weren't even stylish, and headed into the next totally unknown semester of my life. And, I never looked back. And the crazy thing is like any field of study, you're working very hard. And just when you think you've earned enough credits to graduate, you find out from your counselor that you're missing a few. So my advanced coursework, I spent almost 10 years in New York. I began therapy early on for my grief over my mom. I'm still in therapy today. I met a guy on a beach in St. Martin, got married 2 years later, left a job in a city that I loved and moved to Philly. I had some kids, too, with some big issues. I got a divorce. I was a single mom. And over the course of 10 years, I apparently completed most of my credits toward what I would like to call my master's. And I had thought after my mom died that I was done with the School of Hard Knocks. It seems that you're never done. So, yeah, I've been through a ton of crap, but I believe deeply that my story isn't worse than anyone else's here today. We all have a life syllabus that is rich with challenge. And despite all of that stuff, there's so much that I am extremely happy about and proud of. But what I'm most proud of is my role as mom. And that dream came true. I have 5 beautiful children. Jake is 24. My daughter Maggie is 22. Sam is 18. I have 2 wonderful stepsons. Zach is 31 and Corey is 28. And now I can add grandmom, or Mimi as they call me, to my CV because Zach and his wife had a pandemic baby in this little love bug called Ian in the corner. But when I look at these pictures of my children, whether it's contemplating what life would be like after they were born or even now, you often think about all the things you will teach your children. What is the knowledge you will impart on them? Well, what we lose sight of is how much they teach us. And I will tell you that the most influential professor I have ever had is my only daughter, Maggie. So Maggie was born in 1999 with a rare chromosome deletion syndrome, and she is profoundly handicapped and medically fragile. According to the March of Dimes, about 1 in 150 babies is born with a chromosome issue, a chromosome condition. Her specific condition, called P136 deletion syndrome, means that there is a piece of her first chromosome at the 36 locator that is actually not missing but flipped. And that wasn't even a chromosome abnormally that they knew about when she was born. They say that P136 can affect between 1 in 5,000 and 1 in 10,000 newborns, but it's probably understated because so many kids go undiagnosed. So it took me 12 long years to get a definitive diagnosis of what was going on with my strawberry blonde, freckled-faced daughter. But I kept pursuing an answer long after the best doctors in the country told me there was no explanation, none. So my daughter can't walk or talk or sit up or feed herself. She's wheelchair bound, tube fed, and despite the brightness in those beautiful blue eyes, she is considered legally blind. She's been hospitalized more times than I care to recall anymore. And the first 4 years of her life were spent in and out of ICUs, trying to make sure she simply survived. There wasn't anything simple about any of that. Her brother Jake was just 17 months old when she was born. Now, Maggie is 22 and living a healthy, peaceful, relatively predictable life. And you know, how long that life will be, no one can tell me, but I don't think about that anymore. So I have a little video clip to introduce you to Maggie.
You. I see you.
He's so wiggly. He's so fatty.
Yeah, is that what Mommy said? Is that what Mommy said?
So if I'm being honest, she certainly isn't the daughter that I dreamed of when I was a little girl, and she's not the child I counted on to recreate the special mother-daughter relationship I still desperately miss. This broke my heart and my spirit over and over again, and it still does on the dark days that ebb and flow naturally through parenthood. But there came a point after more bargains with God than I can count, everything from take me to I'll give up birthday cake, like crazy, crazy bargains. I started to understand that this was my new normal. And I think during this last couple of years, when people coined the term for the pandemic, the new normal, I was like, yeah, I got another new normal. But while there was a new normal for me and I adjusted and I moved on and I was living happily in spite of it, you know, I will tell you that the grief never went away, and it's still burning there like embers at my core most days. I read a really moving book called Keeping Catherine by Susan Zimmerman, who also had a handicapped child. And you know, she summed it up so well by saying we must go to the places that sit at our core like molten lava. There we are burned to ash. All that became before has changed. The pain and fire have become a part of us. The ash becomes fertilizer for new growth. I can see that now, and boy, have I grown, and I'm confident I haven't stopped growing. But I realized that I would never really be teaching Maggie anything. In fact, she has taught me more than I could have ever thought she was capable of, or dreamed, or imagined. And she's done it in her silent, subtle, and very simple way. So the lessons I've learned as her mom and her advocate through course study at the School of Hard Knocks, it really transcend everything that I do, both personally and professionally, day in and day out. So I'd love to share a handful of those with you today. So finding others who know more than you was critical. I joined a support group of other moms with kids like Maggie when Maggie was just about 1. I found this warm, welcoming group of mothers who met at a room in the Paoli Hospital on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. And all of their kids were severely neurologically impaired, and none of us had diagnoses. Um, it was scary the first night I walked in because I didn't believe that I belonged there. Maggie was only 1, and nobody told me what she would or wouldn't be. But something about it made me stay. It was life-changing and validating. On my first night there, one mom in particular had a teenage daughter similar to Maggie. Again, in hindsight, I know she was similar. Back then, I thought Maggie would be nothing like her, but she was happy, adjusted, smiling, realistic, helpful. She was full of laughter, candor, and advice, and she became my role model for this new role I found myself thrown into. She knew it would be better for me over time. She knew way more than me about the journey, and simply seeing her with a big belly laugh opened this little crack, this ray of hope for me. And the crazy thing is, she doesn't even know how much her smile affected me that first night. So at the age of 12, Maggie's care, now in my single parent home, became simply too much. Even though I had nurses in and out of the house 16 hours a day, the condo I rented wasn't wheelchair accessible. I was working full time, and Sam was about 8 and his issues were escalating rapidly. I had to make a choice, one that I knew I eventually would. So since then, she has lived a 10-minute drive from my home at St. Edmund's Home for Children in Bryn Mawr. I'm not extremely religious. We don't hold that against me, but I believe that is where God's work happens every day, all day long. Every inch of my child is loved and cared for more than I could have ever hoped. They are experts in taking care of kids like Maggie. In fact, they take kids to Disney every year for a week. And when it was Maggie's turn, I was doubtful and reluctant. I didn't want to go. I was afraid the whole trip was just going to be filled with heartbreak. And as we pushed 5 handicapped kids through the Magic Kingdom and Frontierland and everywhere else, I was delighted and it was magical. And when they were telling me about the trip, they said, "Oh, yeah, and we take the kids on rides." I was like, no way. Well, there she is on a log flume with 3 people from St. Ed's. And I was able to ride these rides with her. Disney stops everything and we lug our kids out of our wheelchairs and put them in. That was like a moment for me. But I will say that when I had to admit as a mom that I could no longer directly care for my child in my home, and understanding that I had hit my physical, emotional, and mental capacity, that was really gut wrenching and extremely painful. I had to make a choice. My 2 sons really needed me, and there wasn't enough of me to go around. It was likely the most powerful decision I've ever made. And, I don't regret it, not for a minute. This is Mags when she was maybe 6 months old. The red on her face is an allergic reaction to the tape. I had to thread a tube in her nose every day for tube feeding. Some days she would yank it out 5 times. But after the bath, I took it out and just wanted a picture of that little pumpkin. But I learned to eat the elephant in small chunks. It's a favorite phrase of mine. After so many hospital stays, the medical team really kept me focused on the plan for the day or the hour or even the next few hours when things were looking very bleak for my child. They often redirected me when my mind would race to her future and my questions of what if, will she, and how can I became overwhelming. So by focusing only on the plan of the day, I learned to slow down and compartmentalize. That's been a huge lesson that I deploy often. Just last night, I woke up at 3 o'clock with my menopausal bladder, and I laid back down and I started worrying about Sam. And I stopped and I recognized it, and I visually slammed the door on that, because I knew there was nothing I could do. And in business, when my team has looked to me for direction as a leader, sometimes I'm always comfortable saying, well, I'm not sure for the long run, but I know what we need to do today, or I know what we need to do this week. So let's do that and make the progress. And by the time we get to the next milestone, we'll figure out what's next. Some days for me, the getting through the day is focusing on unloading the dishwasher, or making sure this new pandemic puppy I got doesn't crap in my house, or responding only to the most important client needs. And that's enough. I have given myself permission to do this. Maggie taught me how to ask for help. Now I'm okay with others doing my laundry or cooking for my kids. One year, when she was in the ICU on life support, I even let someone else do all the Christmas shopping for Maggie and Jake. This picture was taken the day after she came home from a 6-week near-death stay at the hospital. Despite having my huge family, you heard me refer to them, none of them live near me. So we really came to rely on the kindness of strangers, and that plays, it's way more than a famous line from a play for me, but it goes both ways. So once you've been comfortable with asking, you also know that offering is equally as rewarding. So I know when I'm not having a very good day, I make an effort to help or be kind to someone other. I feel better. It like lifts for me. Even small things like smiling at the lady at the Acme whose legs are killing her after 10-hour shift, like looking her in the eyes and really asking, how you doing? Somebody, as this came a thing in the pandemic, bought my coffee in line at the Starbucks. And I do that days, not when I'm feeling like happy-go-lucky, but on days when I feel crappy because everybody else has something else. So you can do the small things and you can do the larger things. I'm very philanthropically involved. You can mentor, you can, do volunteer work. You can take the meeting of your neighbor's friend's kid who has no idea what they want to be when they grow up, but make it a habit, ask and offer help. This is something that I really, really learned from Maggie. It's a little bit about helping, but after the daily shock of her condition wore off somewhat, and we weren't focused on every day on keeping her alive. And once I sort of picked my head up from this debilitating grief of it all, I formed an organization called Parents Speak with another mom from the support group who is now a very dear warrior friend. And for about a decade, we shared our stories with doctors, nurses, hospitals, schools, residents, therapists, teachers, any of the professionals that we relied on to help care for our kids. We took our story across the country, and it was our goal to build bridges and a greater level of empathy with this caregiver on behalf of our kids. It also was our ability to explain who we were as parents, because they were going to be forced to working with us. And we did that because we knew that all of these caregivers would work with more kids like Maggie. And I found that being brave enough to share the true pain and disappointment, the highs and the lows of the journey with my daughter, we helped others feel better about their situations. Often parents would be in the audience and they would say, thank God, I thought I was the only one who felt that way. We offered hope, and those professionals, they had critical insights. The first time we did our presentation was in grand rounds at Children's Hospital in front of neurologists. And one doctor raised his hand from the back and said, I never thought about it that way. So Maggie couldn't speak for herself, and there was no medical roadmap. So I was navigating it all through instinct. And I will say I was never wrong when it came to what I felt was going on with my daughter. Those instincts were honed over time, and I learned to listen to them, and was really critical to the partnership from the medical team. Some of them passed off my instincts as like, a worrisome, frenetic mom. And my instinct said, go find another team that respects you. They were never off. All right. Okay, wait. There was one time that was actually kind of funny, and it was off. She was in the hospital, and she was like about the size as she was in the picture with the thing on her face, right? And this whole swarm of neurologists came in, the lead neurologist in residence, and they got around the bed and they said, hey, mom, that's what they call you. They don't know your name, they just know your mom. What's going on with Maggie today? And I said, well, I think her breath smells funny. And the neurologist was patient. And it's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, when you don't know what's going on, you're going to pay attention to all the little things, and physiology can impact things. And, Lord knows if you have teenage sons, you know what I'm talking about in terms of what comes out of their bodies. But that day, I asked an entire group of neurologists to smell her breath because I thought for sure it was indicative of something. Well, they did, and it wasn't. And nobody teased me about it. And the doctor just went on. My instincts were tested with Sam, who has ADHD, and he's had his more than his fair share, and honestly more than my fair share of challenges. He had been tested by schools and some other professionals over and over again. They still just said, oh, he's got ADHD and he's a kid who acts out. He got kicked out of public school in 3rd grade. I have this nagging gut feeling that we didn't have a complete picture, and despite of all the reports, and something else was going on. It had to be more than ADHD and a messy divorce and a handicapped sister. And there was a moment that it became crystal clear to me that I had to figure it out. And I remember it. They're called flashbulb moments. You literally, it's like indelibly printed on your mind. And he and his brother Jake and I were out in the snow, packing snow to make a ramp. And Jake and I were going fast, and we're digging and we're yelling instructions. And Sam stands up and he says, stop. I don't know what you are saying. And at that moment, I knew something else was going on. So I found another professional, and she took the time to test him. And she figured out this kid has a learning disability called auditory processing. And it increases his frustration and it makes him feel dumb. I found this out when he was 11. I found the right school for him. Again, finding people who know more than me. And here he is, having graduated from high school this past June. His journey is still really rocky, and I'm pretty certain he will be the main curriculum item and my part of my PhD work. But the point is, if I hadn't road tested those instincts with Maggie over and over again, I'm not sure I would have pressed on with Sam. And I've learned to trust those instincts professionally and personally. So I learned to look at the small stuff in a way that I cherish it and I don't sweat it. Sam has really taught me to let go of battles that aren't worth it. When he was younger, there were days that child didn't feel like wearing underpants. And even today, he often forgets to brush his teeth when he asks me for a piece of gum. Ew, 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 ew. And even though I've said to him, well, if we get in an accident when he was little and you don't have any underpants on, you're going to be embarrassed, or your teeth will fall out if you don't brush. Many days I'm like, whatever, I don't really care. In Maggie's case, the small, subtle stuff is everything. It took her 8 months to smile in response to me, and 4 years to capture it in this little preschool picture in the lower right-hand corner. She may not be able to see me, but when I walk in the room and I say, hi, Mags, it's Mama, I'm here. After a moment, she stops, and then her little wobbly head turns toward my voice and she cracks like a little crooked smile. And that's all I need. It means everything to me. That's her saying, hi, Mom, I'm so glad you're here. So noticing the small stuff is known as mindfulness now. For me, it's really critical to practicing gratitude. You know, here I am at Disney, a believer now. I'm really a happy person by nature, but even I, have been broken a lot. And it's the biggest thing I've learned is it's possible to choose happiness over sorrow. It is an active choice and it's purposeful. I'm trying to teach my kids this, and it's a mission and a constant quest. And for me, it does start with practicing gratitude. I learned to look at the small things and be thankful for them when Maggie was so young and the days were really, really dark and I'd fall into bed at night. I had always kept journals, but I couldn't write. And so I decided to write down all the funny little things that Jake was doing at 2 and 3 and 4 so that I knew there was something to be happy about, and everything, it wasn't all bad. We have a tradition in our home where we sit down to eat as a family. We all hold hands. We don't care who you are, how well you know us, and we say what we're grateful for each. Sam's favorite is good day, good dinner. I'm like, really? Could you come up with something else? But it's a start. So for me, I try to find something positive. I'm not a Pollyanna. I hope I don't come across that way. Some days I'm just thankful that the day is over and I can go to sleep, take a Tylenol PM, and know that tomorrow will be better. And it usually is. I've learned that telling my story is healing for me. And more importantly, it's validation for my daughter, Maggie, and her unexplainable situation. This is her purpose through me, and this is my purpose through her. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my story today, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Molly, so nice to see Maggie and Sam and your family pictures and hear your story. If anybody has questions for Molly, I know there's a lot to think about. Please throw them into chat. I do have a question. It's so nice to see siblings and I think a couple of stepsons that you have.
Yes, and a new husband in the back corner. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of the sibs with the family where you have special needs kids, and how that, how you've had to educate your sons as well?
Well, of course, my sons Jake and Sam have been with Maggie, since the beginning. Zach and Corey have been a part of our life for the last 13 years, but Zach was already out of the house and Corey was almost on his way to college. So they have different sort of levels of participation. But if you go back to when the boys were little, we had a pool and, we had play dates and friends and all of those things over. Jake and Sam's friends knew that their friend had to say hi to Maggie when they came in. And that meant touching her and just saying, hi, Mags, how are you? So I guess it would be demanded, but in a way that was hopefully educational and empathetic, that they acknowledged her. The boys have, were very patient in many ways, whether it's doctor's appointments. I will say that Jake is my more empathetic son and Sam is a lot more sort of self-directed, but they are gentle with her. She recognizes their voices. If Maggie's home, if my husband Rick's not around, one of the boys will pick her up and put her in the car for me. And my stepsons, and I have to credit my husband for this, his family from the very beginning, when we started dating, Sammy was 6 and Maggie was 8, and they welcomed us with open arms. And they had no experience with handicapped kids. But, if you ask Zach or Corey, who are their siblings, they will say, I have 2 stepbrothers and a stepsister, and they ask about her. And when they see her, they come and touch her and talk to her. So, I don't have the expectation that anybody's going to have the connection that I have with her. I just ask that they acknowledge her humanity.
Thank you so much. I see a comment. Thank you so much for sharing with such candor your beautiful family. You are the glue that holds it all together. Can you tell us maybe what one of those really tough days, the days where you offer as opposed to ask, or the days where you've woken up at 3 a.m. and used all your, all your tactics to kind of get yourself back in the moment. But what would a really rough day be like, and how would you overcome that?
So a really rough day recently, Sam got suspended from a program. He didn't go to college. He's participating in an internship program, and he was screwing up left and right and got suspended and sent home. I don't know what the plan for him is, but what I did is I knew that I shouldn't have any more caffeine, before he came home. I knew that I needed to go to yoga, and I knew that I needed to focus really hard on just going day to day. And sometimes that's very hard for me. I'm type A, and taking care of everybody and having a plan and moving it forward. I mean, my sister will say, let go, let God. It's super hard for me to let go. But it's a moment where I had another instance where I've learned to just say, I'm going to go to bed. Right. And just call it a day and give myself permission to stop. So I have found coping skills. Exercise is a big thing for me. When I was younger, it was running, but now it's yoga or even taking a walk. I have a therapist. I also am a happy pharmaceutical taking person, so there's not any one thing, but most of it is giving myself permission to not know what to do, and being kind with myself. When I was running bigger teams in my career, I was just candid, and I would say, guys, look, I was up all night. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but give me a little extra latitude today, and please tell me if you need something more from me. So I absolutely believe in being truthful without sort of throwing up all over everybody what your issues are.
We have a question from Caitlin. How do you let go of comparing yourself to someone who has it, quote, easier than you?
That's funny. Do you mind if I stop sharing so at least I could see you? Yeah, okay. It's tough. Sometimes I purposefully avoid situations. So when I was younger, all my best friends had daughters a year within when Maggie was born. And, none of them had any out of the ordinary issues. And I just said to them, I can't visit. I can't celebrate. I'm not on Facebook anymore. It's like, when I transitioned from career running a big agency to now running my own business, I would not get on LinkedIn because my imposter syndrome would kick in. But one time I realized I was at a party, and Maggie was maybe 2. We were at our friends, and she'd just gotten out of the hospital, and there was another woman there with a baby. I don't know if Maggie was 2. I mean, I had to hold her so much. She could have been 8 months or 2 years old, but a woman started a conversation with me, and she wanted to know about Maggie. And I told her some of it, you just don't spray them. And she said, oh, I can imagine how frustrating it is when my son gets ear infections. I can't even stand it. And I had this moment where I could either say, are you kidding me? Ear infection? Do you see this tube? Do you see this like floppy head? But I was like, you know what? She is trying to relate to me. And then I remembered when Jake was my only child and he had an ear infection and screamed, I thought it was the worst thing in the world. So I really try to remember that we can only, our experiences they're our own. But look, my husband will tell you, we could be walking in the mall, and if I see a little redheaded girl walking away from me holding her mom's hand, it still hurts, right? So I am honest with those who love me, like my best friends who stood by me, right? Or if I said everybody's boys went off to college and Sam is screwing up, and I've said, and my one best friend knows that most, and so you find your posse, and you let them know what hurts because they want to help you, and they, so you have to choose you, and you have to learn to admit sometimes the icky stuff. Like I'm totally jealous, that all of Maggie's peers graduated from college this year. Maybe jealous isn't the issue, but but I acknowledge it. So
I think the group would agree that your honesty and sincerity is just right there. It's wonderful. I see that Bev jumped in to say what incredible strength to have that kind of perspective that you have. So you're bringing all those grown-up words and all those grown-up skills to your life, and it's showing through your presentation. You really have
thank you.
great perspective and so many lessons that you've shared today. I've got another comment from Tyra. You're making me cry. You're so authentic and so strong. We all hold weight, and I just want to give you a hug for being mom. Thank you for your courage to share.
Thank you, Tyra.
Feel
Thank you.
terrific at the end of this day.
Yeah, no, it's just, as I said, it's every bit, there's a famous quote from the wife of the guy that wrote The Great Gatsby. Who wrote The Great Gatsby?
F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
This
So
is
his wife's name was like,
yeah,
anyway, she said,
Zelda.
only poets, Zelda, right. Only poets know how much a heart can hold. And just when you think you can't hold anymore, you can. But my heart is a yin and a yang of pain and happiness. And that's okay. You got to try to lean one way when you can. So
I think that heart is a yin and a yang is a great image that's going to stick with me, I can tell you. Is there anyone else that wants to jump in with a question before we say goodbye and have a great weekend to Molly? Well, then I will say it. This was thoroughly informative and enjoyable. It was great getting to know you and your family. On behalf of the group, thank you for hanging out with us today and giving us such great information. I hope everyone out there has a wonderful weekend. We have one more session this afternoon, so don't leave quite yet, but click into our final chat at 3:05, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Linda, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just watching people drop off. We can stay for a minute.
Okay. I just would love to get a copy of the chat thread if possible, because I couldn't read it as it went.
You know what I'm going to do just in case? I'm going to do a quick copy and paste. I find that a nice little trick just in case Zoom doesn't let me keep it. And then I just paste it into my Word.
Thank you so much.
To you. This was great.
Thank you.
Seasoned and skilled and professional and personal at the same time. And I appreciate, it's tough. A lot of people could not do what you do, as you know.
No, people find a way. So they do. So I'm just honored to have participated, and thank you all for including me.
We're so glad. I'll be in touch next week.
Okay.
That you have a wonderful weekend, and thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful job.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.